You can see now that side hatch is open. One of the Navy personnel is about to get inside there. In they go. In total, 4 will go into Orion. So it'll be a little bit of a tight squeeze, but the goal is to have a recovery personnel with each astronaut assessing them. Boats getting closer now. Again, that one that's right up against Orion, those are the divers that will go in to the spacecraft to check on each of the astronauts. These other boats will begin doing a number of things, putting on that stabilization collar onto Orion, building that front porch. Eventually they will retrieve the parachutes, as well as tow Orion back to the well deck of the recovery ship here. And so as we wait for the Navy and NASA personnel to get their assessment of the crew inside of Orion, why don't we toss it back to Rob for an update?
Yes, thank you, Megan. Here in Mission Control, Flight Director Rick Henfling and the entry team of flight controllers still on duty. The vehicle has been powered down for some time now. There are no hazardous gases emanating from integrity. That, of course, allowed the recovery personnel to approach the vehicle and then open the hatch to begin the initial medical assessment of the crew, as you just indicated. Now we're standing by for the erection of that inflatable raft, the front porch, alongside of the vehicle that will enable the crew to be extracted one by one onto the raft, have a moment or two to get their land legs back before they're hoisted into 2 hovering Navy helicopters, 2 crew members for each helicopter, for a short flight back to the deck of the USS John P. Murtha. All of Integrity's systems operated flawlessly throughout the course of the approach to the Earth, the entry into the Earth's atmosphere, and all of the key milestones that followed in this high-speed return to Earth for Integrity, a mission that spanned more than 694,000 miles from the vehicle's launch from the Kennedy Space Center atop the Space Launch System back on April 1st.
Guys, finally they are falling back today. Guys just smashed into this atmosphere at 4,000 kilometers per hour. That's 2 times the speed of sound. Fast enough that...
As we mentioned at the top of the broadcast, the last time that the Apollo program saw a splashdown in the Pacific was Apollo 17 back on December 19th, 1972. So for the first time in 53 and a half years, We have reenacted that with the arrival of Integrity's astronauts as they flew around the moon in that historic lunar flyby that began with a trans-lunar injection burn that took them out of Earth orbit following 24 hours of a high Earth orbit trajectory. The high Earth orbit trajectory enabled flight controllers here to have a full 24 hours to evaluate the systems on Integrity and the condition of the crew before they would commit to flying to the moon.
So don't stop pushing your mind. Just be the next person to represent your nation to the whole stars. Stay tuned because I'm going to give you with doses of place and photo as you need for the everything. Guys, it survived the moon. Just yesterday, they went behind the moon. Signal communication from alone in the deep space. Right now, what we see is on this space capsule here. And this is the most dangerous part of the mission. Earth is slowly getting bigger than windows, while the moon is going to fade behind them. But here is the part of what is not happening. Earth is not putting their plan, not with the engine, but with the force of gravity. And that has to be perfect because if that comes too fast, it burns off the atmosphere and drift back into the atmosphere. Right now, NASA is tracking every moment down to the smallest thing. At any moment, they might press one engine just to slightly adjust that part. This adjustment decided to make 6 minutes inside the cockpit. Guys, finally they are. Everybody, let's wait. Maybe we can get the next trip. Alright? If you want to put yourself on the viewer's eye, put yourself on the viewer's eye. Use this moment to elevate yourself. 15,000 is a whole lot of weight and energy, okay? But if you want to do this, I know we can do it. But if you don't want to, okay. Are you ready to live? I want for the Israelis.
With the side hatch of Orion having been opened to set the stage for the erection of the inflatable life raft, known as the front porch, to be erected alongside the spacecraft for the extraction of the crew. Let's play for you an interview that my colleague Megan Cruz conducted on the USS John P. Murtha with Navy diver First Class David McMahon that explains how this process is unfolding.
Okay, Davey, so you and some of your team, one last look over of the stabilization collar, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so what is this stabilization collar?
This is what's going to stabilize the capsule out there in the ocean. We don't know how good the weather or the waves will be that day, so this will help prevent any unnecessary occurrences from happening, stabilizing the capsule and the astronauts inside.
So basically, this is a float that will go around Orion. I'm assuming that what they're doing right now, these are the lines that will attach the collar onto Orion.
That is correct.
And so what are they doing here?
So we've got the lower line that will secure the inflation device before we inflate it. That gives us the go-ahead that it's secure in space, and then we'll inflate it. And then once that is done, we'll undo all the carabiners and get this orange line on top tied in the same fashion. And then this will be secured to the capsule, and the astronauts can safely take their first steps out of the capsule onto the front porch.
Okay, and how long will it take them to set up the stabilization
We
collar?
should definitely be able to handle this in under 10 minutes.
Okay, wow. And then you just mentioned the front porch. So basically, after they set up the stabilization collar, then they set up what's called the front porch here.
That's correct.
Okay, and what's the front porch?
Front porch is basically a bigger waiting room for the astronauts to sit in while we wait for the helicopters to show up and grab them.
Okay, so the medical team that was inside with the crew, they're going to help them out and onto the front porch?
That is correct.
And then what happens here?
We have hired trained medical personnel also on board the front porch that will give them look-overs and just make sure they're okay while we wait for the helicopters to show up.
Okay. How does it feel? I mean, your team, you, to be part of a mission that's returning astronauts from the moon in more than 50 years?
We all feel extremely honored to be a part of this, as well as a bigger mission for the Navy and joining up with NASA to do great things.
And do you feel like you and your team are ready?
Yes, very ready.
Cool. All right, thank you so much.
Yep.
Once again, the recovery operations are continuing out in the Pacific. We shortly should see that life raft, the front porch, erected alongside the side hatch of the vehicle. A number of flight controllers have come into the flight control room to receive congratulations from Entry Flight Director Rick Henfling. But we're going to stick with our operations out in the Pacific as we await the extraction of the 4 crew members who are reported to be in excellent condition. Again, while we stand by for that front porch to be erected alongside of the side hatch of the vehicle, let's go back to the USS John P. Murtha and Megan Cruz. Megan?
Hey, Rob. Pausing now to listen to some internal audio loops again. The operations team here on the ship communicating with everyone out on the water. Seems like currents are hindering them a little bit from unfurling and inflating the stabilization collar as well as the front porch. But again, the requirement to get the crew out within 2 hours of splashdown, plenty of time. So no concerns just yet. But as calm as the water looks, yeah, it looks like it's hindering the teams just a tad. You can see in some of our shots that side hatch still open. Again, inside, there are now 8 people inside. 4 divers, Navy divers, all with medical training, each assigned to an astronaut each. Making sure that they're comfortable, feeling good. As you've heard us say in the broadcast, they expect a little bit of discomfort. Again, these astronauts just traveled back to Earth at 25,000 miles an hour, a nearly 695,000 mile journey around the moon. If you think you get carsick. again, 6 boats out there, lots of gear with them, just in case, right? As we said, the crew reported feeling great, but again, all those folks out there in case they weren't, right? NASA is all about making sure we think about every situation that can happen, and so of course wanted to be ready in case any of our astronauts needed more medical attention while out there in the water. You see now teams again trying to set up the stabilization collar and front porch for the crew to get out of Orion. They need both, right? The stabilization collar will keep Orion from swaying as you see it is doing now. And then they will connect to the front porch to the stabilization collar so that the crew can take 2 steps and they will be in the front porch. Not a lot of chatter on the mission audio loops, that's a good thing. Again, things proceeding pretty nominally, even if they're fighting some currents out there on the Pacific Ocean. Again, the goal, setting up the stabilization collar and the front porch so that the crew can rest comfortably in the front porch, get placed into harnesses so that 2 helicopters can lift them off the front porch and onto the USS John Murtha here. The helicopters are going to take turns picking up an astronaut. So again, Helo 1 and Helo 2. Okay, and the recovery team here on the ship just got a report from the undersea medical officer who is inside the capsule with the crew. He is reporting all 4 members are green. All of our 4 astronauts, Reed, Victor, Christina, Jeremy, they are feeling great, happy to be home, and ready to be extracted as soon as possible. And so, as I was saying, we have 2 helicopters circling the activity you're seeing on the water right now. Each will take turns picking up an astronaut. So Helo 1 will come on in, hover above the front porch, about 40 feet above the front porch. A Navy recovery specialist will be hoisted down into the front porch. Will connect to the first astronaut, which we're expecting to be Christina. And then Helo 2 comes around, picks up Jeremy, while Helo 1 stays above head. And then Helo 1 will come back in for another astronaut, and then Helo 2 for the last astronaut.